like we really have a problem here.
You're proposing taking money away from the pharmaceutical companies. You're proposing taking money away from the media companies. You're proposing taking money away from the lobbyists. You're proposing taking money away from the politicians. You're proposing taking money away from the healthcare system, the doctors and the surgeons. These are the biggest industries in the world, and you're proposing that you take money away from them. I can't imagine they're going to be happy about that. RFK and Trump. There are rumors and there are stories out there that you were kind of responsible for the two coming together. Is that true? Can you walk us through that a little bit?
So RFK's brought me into it a little bit. I was expecting this to go to the grave, but I can give my side of it. I was never going to talk about it, but since I've been invoked in it, I'll give
a little bit
the perspective from what I've seen. To me, the story all starts with burying my mom, and my sister and I decided to write this book in 2021. Really feeling we had something important to say, like I said. We started writing this, and we started speaking out, and we started companies to solve this. Through that advocacy and through great podcasts of people like Tucker, having my sister and me on, we've been able to get the message out. And there's been a real visceral, I think, sense of, oh my gosh, we got to solve this. And just an amazing DMs that I get. Members of Congress in both parties. So my sister and I this year will meet with 100 members of Congress, and we have really powerful meetings. People cry in these meetings. I mean, there is a desire to kind of figure this out and stop it, and it's a feeling of leaders that they've really been kind of blinded to this by bad forces. RFK, I've been lucky to be connected with, and obviously, I think the media marginalizes him and tries to slur him. He is in this clearly, for anyone that's watching what he's saying, to solve the childhood chronic disease crisis. And I think he has done such a contribution in the national debate to bring this to light. And then the Trump campaign, President Trump actually a year ago gave a very powerful speech on getting to the bottom of why kids are getting so sick, and has been talking about this for over a year. And I have been in touch with his staff, who is very passionate about this issue and wants to get to the bottom of it and wants it to be a legacy issue. So that was the context. After President Trump was shot, the attempted assassination, I felt a spiritual urge almost that to do whatever I could to foster unity, because I felt from my preparation and just experience with politics that there are these moments that can change things. Frankly, like dramatic moments, like 9/11, for better or worse, the neocons were ready and they were able to do the Iraq War. With the COVID, the pharma industry was ready to do the lockdowns and to really test and I think have a prep kind of of keeping us in fear and keeping us controlled. Like forces were ready, and when they can jump on moments for good or bad, it really matters. And this Trump assassination attempt was a moment where the deck could be reshuffled. And I just felt the urge to call Robert and say that. And from my perspective, what I saw is that Robert Kennedy is in this to push the issue of childhood health and really serve and honor the movement that he's built. It is not about him. It's not about the campaign. It is about doing. He said this. He said he prays every single day for 19 years to figure out and be in a position to reverse the childhood chronic disease crisis. So he has always been thinking about that. I was able to have a conversation with him about that, and I offered to try to connect him with President Trump. He thought about it, called me back, said he would like to discuss unity and just discuss these concepts. And I worked, this is all reported, I thought this was going to go to the grave, but then worked with Tucker to connect them that night. And this is all these two. I'm a very small footnote in this. And I will just say one thing from my limited vantage point, which is that this was about the issue of childhood chronic disease. These two men spent hours and hours and hours talking about why our kids are so diabetic and so sick. And they did not talk about polling, and they did not talk about horse trading. And there was not like political consultants, doing analysis. This was a true connection on what I believe, my personal opinion, is really the true driver of why President Trump, whatever you think of him, is the dominant figure in American life over the past decade. It's because he's channeled frustration among his voters about our institutions letting us down. And that rationale of his candidacy is correct. Like his reason he has such a connection with his voters to such a historical degree is because of a correct thesis, which is that our institutions are letting them down. And I think from my small vantage point, they connected over this idea that actually healthcare and why our kids are getting so sick and profiting our largest industries is actually an example of what I think RFK and Trump have communicated better than any two politicians I've ever seen, which is just like why our institutions letting us down. And they connected on that. So it took, weeks of conversation, but just as I think this is a bipartisan issue, and this week in DC, I'm going to be meeting with a lot of people from both sides of the party, and we need to be very clear it's a bipartisan issue. We also should be really clear that when politicians bring such existential topics to the top of the national conversation, we should not be deterred from praising them. Everybody should be praising President Trump and RFK for standing up at rallies and talking about regenerative agriculture, for talking about taking our toxins out of our environment, out of our food. These are really, really important big topics. And it is a very positive development that a major presidential campaign is talking about these macro issues.
And I mean, we've mentioned President Trump and RFK Jr., who are kind of almost championing this as part of their platform, something they're talking a lot about, thinking about, and I appreciate that greatly. On the other side, who are maybe some people that are really interested in this and have shown that they actually care?
Oh yeah, I mean, there's Democrats that are really trying to do the right thing. I mean, I've met with Cory Booker a number of times, and he's been a good leader on the food system. I think wants to do the right thing. I mean, President Biden has considered signing some of the same executive orders Trump has signed. I mean, these are all things: HSA expansion, taking corruption out of our guidelines, changing our broken agriculture incentives. Theoretically, right, these are things that resonate with people on the left and the right. I mean, we've engaged with the White House. I would encourage the White House. It would be politically smart for them to steal what RFK and Trump are talking about and doing it now. I would ask why they're not doing that, honestly, if they don't. But I have an open line with anyone who will want to listen. And my political 2 cents is that this is the issue people care about. This is an issue that a rally for Bernie Sanders or a rally for President Trump, people viscerally start cheering when we talk about not poisoning our kids and talk about the corruption that leads to that. It's a jump ball. It's the uniparty versus the American people. It's not left or right. And, it would perplex me, quite frankly, if Democrats didn't try to steal this issue that Trump and RFK are talking about. They should. There's no reason they shouldn't. And I think any politician who doesn't speak clearly about this issue, it is appropriate to ask what's going on. Like, why? I mean, where my head goes to is that pharma is the single greatest funder of politicians themselves. They spend 5 times more on political donations than the oil industry, the media, academic research institutions, civil rights groups. They're the largest funder of the NAACP. And the NAACP is now a registered lobbyist for Ozempic, saying it's a social justice assault and racist not to have government funding for Ozempic. I mean, you have to ask what's happening if a politician can't speak clearly about healthy food and healthy environment for children.
But your proposed plan, your 3-point plan, is pretty straightforward and basic and very common sense.
Yeah.
But you're also talking about completely usurping and flipping over how the system currently works. I mean, it seems simple in theory, but really, it's a really radical change from how things are done.
It is radical. It is radical.
Possible?
I
guess that's the real question.
It could happen tomorrow. It's easy to do. It is very easy to sign, and I have them. They're 2 pages. Signing an executive order saying that the USDA Nutrition Guideline Committee can't take money from food companies is easy. signing a executive order saying that NIH needs to refocus on core foundational research and not have 80% of their grants be going to conflicted researchers who are profiting from people being sick, not studying why people are getting sick. That can be reoriented tomorrow with the right personnel and right executive orders. Having an executive order saying no longer is the FDA going to be 75% funded by pharma, that can be done tomorrow. These things can be done tomorrow. You can spur HSA expansion tomorrow through executive orders, and you can sign an executive order saying that SNAP can't go to diabetes water, aka Coca-Cola, tomorrow. So no, like just those things alone would do a lot of things. You could sign an executive order tomorrow saying that no longer can the United States be the only country in the world, New Zealand somewhat, but really the US is essentially the only country that allows the pharmaceutical industry to co-opt our information sources, to do direct consumer advertising, to be 50% of mainstream TV news funding. I mean, it's unfathomable. You wonder why the news doesn't report these stories. All these things can be done quickly. As far as being radical, yeah, I mean, unwinding our sick care system, which is fuels the largest industry, the most employment of any industry. Yeah, I mean, there'll be opposition to that. In some sense, it's not radical. What I'm not actually saying we need to shift everything to healthy eating and exercise. I am saying something very unradical, which is that our medical standards of care should follow the appropriate clinical guidelines. It is clinically inaccurate the moment somebody has slightly high cholesterol to prescribe them drugs and not incentivize them to perform better lifestyle habits. Mathematically, we are not going to drug our way to a better budget and better health. It's not going to happen. That empirically is just so obvious. We are on track to be an infertile, fat, unhealthy, and depressed population while bankrupting our country because healthcare costs are the largest source of our budget and growing at 2 times the rate of GDP growth and going to be 40% of costs in 15 years. It's growing at an increasing rate right now. It's going to bankrupt the country while producing worse results and a non-competitive infertile population. Mathematically, we have to change this. And to me, it really is simple. We do not change it by injecting and drugging everyone. We have to actually get healthier as a country. So it has to be changing our clinical guidelines to actually produce health, not profit from people being sick. It's going to have to happen eventually. So, and it will be disruptive to the current sick care system. But you tell me, I just don't see any other way. We really have a problem here.
You're proposing taking money away from the pharmaceutical companies. You're proposing taking money away from the media companies. You're proposing taking money away from the lobbyists. You're proposing taking money away from the politicians. You're proposing taking money away from the healthcare system, the doctors, and the surgeons. These are the biggest industries in the world, and you're proposing that you take money away from them. I can't imagine they're going to be happy about that.
They're powerful industries. And I think you do bring up, it's something we should be very clear about. The degree of change that we need and the degree of the problem we have will probably facilitate some short-term economic dislocation. It is not good that America spends $14,000 per capita on healthcare per American per year. And that being 3 times more than an average European country, producing worse results. We literally die 6 years younger than a Spaniard or an Italian. I mean, it's really, really high. So that's not good. It is unfortunate and really part of the problem that so many people profit from the sick care system, and there'll be dislocations. How I'd frame it is we're not taking money away from anyone, and we're frankly not even saying that the world and medical guidelines should be anti-drug. There should be a firm flag in the ground that for the chronic conditions that are costing 90% of medical costs, 9 out of 10 leading killers of Americans, that we should follow the science. To me, it is about following the science. And obviously, with our medical incentives, we should not be going straight to drugs. We should not be playing whack-a-mole with the problem. That's what the book's about. That's what our whole thesis is about. My sister, graduating medical school, chose one of 42 medical specialties like every other doctor. We silo the body of disease into different different areas, and those doctors don't talk to each other, and that's why so many Americans are on so many different drugs, playing whack-a-mole with so many different symptoms that are actually the same thing at the end of the day. They're all tied to our body not producing energy correctly and cellular dysfunction caused by our environment and our food and our habits. Like, we just have to recognize that scientific reality, which I actually think, if you push most doctors on, isn't even controversial. So in a sense, the way I'd message it is, it's just a demand to follow the science and take our medical budget, empower Americans to have choice with where that goes, and empower them to figure out the right path with their doctor and have flexibility with where their funds go, and have medical guidance and research guidance that's not corrupted. Like, so in a sense, I don't think that's that radical. And I think you can frame it the right way. I think the American people are behind that. But I think the big threat here is it just will. I think when our health becomes it's a jobs program. I mean, I was down in I think it was Alabama. There was a billboard that said, hiring nurses, no criminal background check. There's such a demand and voracious appetite to like hire people in this industry. This is just this big jobs program. Yeah, I mean that's always tough. I mean, 78% of U.S. states, the biggest employer in the state is either a healthcare entity or Walmart, which is the largest food retailer.